Right, well, what have we got here? Now, this is the mystery machine that I've mentioned a few times in recent videos. This is a machine I've bought recently, and it's not in working order, but let's open it up and have a little look. So, this is a HMV machine, and if you know where to look, which is under here, you can see that it's a Model 130, and this machine dates to the early 1930s, maybe 30, 31, somewhere around there, and it's quite late actually for a HMV wind-up machine. It's got the rather nice sound box on it. I think this is a 5A if I remember rightly, and it's kind of like a desktop version of a HMV 102, and apparently this was one of the better sounding, if not the best sounding, HMV tabletop machines which were made. So I'm going to put the cameras up on tripods or stands, and we'll look a bit further. Right, that's better. I've got my hands free now, so we can start having a little look at what's in here. So as I mentioned, there is a sound box in here. I can see that's a number 5A. I am not going to take that off. That's pot metal. It's been on there a long time, so I think we'll leave that on. There are a few other bits and pieces. Got this used needle tin here. Maybe we'll try this camera here. So we're just going to take a few bits and pieces out. These are bits of sort of like needle packets, fibre needles. There's another bit of a packet there. There are actually some needles, I think fibre needles in this dish here. There we go. There's a few more in there. There might even be some ordinary needles. No, there aren't. And those little needle cups are actually screwed into place. Now, when I found this machine in a shop, it wasn't working. It was the only one there. It was actually a sort of a furniture shop, and they weren't too sure about it. And I gave it, well, I tried to give it a bit of a wind, and to be honest, the winding handle was very, very stiff. And I'm not going to demonstrate it now because I really don't know what's going on underneath the covers. But it didn't want to wind, and it didn't want to unscrew either. So I'm going to have a look at that. What I did do though, and I'll try it again now, is actually release the auto brake, and then if I wind it backwards like this, this is actually winding up the spring by turning the platter the wrong way, and actually there should be two springs in this. And if I do that, you can see there does appear to be some evidence that there are springs in this machine. I mean, that's on fast mode. So you may not be able to see that, but I'm adjusting the speed control, and the speed control is working. So I can tell that there is clearly a motor in there with some springs in it, but whether the motor is in any sort of fit shape really, it could have two broken springs and still wind up a little bit. It is possible. Certainly one broken spring, it will certainly wind a bit. So I don't really know what state it's in, but realistically I'm going to have to take it to pieces and actually have a look at the motor. Now, before I go any further, I just want to make it clear that this is not a tutorial. It's just an entertainment video on me trying to get this machine running. I may not get everything right, and this video should not be taken as advice or instruction. Thank you. So just for convenience, I'm going to remove the needle tin here. This needle tin here if it wants to come out. probably been in there a long time. Maybe we'll leave that one in. I think the little plaque, yeah, that comes out. I'm not sure if it's supposed to. In fact, it looks like it was glued in at some point, so we might do something with that in the future. Definitely don't want to lose that though. The tone arm is actually on a separate piece of wood here. It's got separate screws, you probably can't see, to the main motorboard here. The main motorboard does actually have some knobs. It's got one there, which is actually a bit loose, in fact, really quite loose. And this knob here as well. There's one down here as well, which I think is probably just off camera shot. Now the platter should just lift off, but it's probably been on there quite some time, so it may be a bit reluctant. Let's give it a quick go though. Right. Well, that was easy enough. I can't remember actually if I took this off in the shop or not. So I think the next thing is going to be to remove the winding handle so I can get the motor out. So slightly suspiciously, I see there's actually a loose screw here. It's almost like somebody's taken that escutcheon off at some point in the past. And whilst it might look like it's just very dirty or rusty, and this might look like it's rusty as well, I think actually this was the finish they put on at the time. I forget what it was called now, but not all the finish on the outside was always sort of bright polished nickel or chrome. Sometimes they did actually go for a sort of brown finish as well. So maybe I can just unwind it, and if I was winding it, it would be clockwise, so to unscrew the winding handle is anti-clockwise. So let's just try it. Oh, that's very stiff. That does not feel like it wants to come off. Okay, so my cunning plan, I think, is probably to take this escutcheon off here and actually to put some lubricant down in along the shaft as best I can. Now another option on some machines would be to heat up the handle, but because of the finish on it, I am concerned that that will actually just damage the finish, and I don't really want to do that. And yes, the winding handle isn't anything particularly special. I could get another one. I've probably got a spare one that will fit it, but it's the original one, and I don't want to ruin it. I don't know if you heard that, but that sounded like a bit of a thump from the spring barrel. So that's one of the springs unwinding rather suddenly, which can happen if there's sticky grease. They don't unwind evenly when they're all stuck together with grease. Right, so I found a screwdriver. It's a reasonably good fit for the screws. Not sure if that's in focus. I think that's a machine screw of some description. If things don't come out on the video, I'll drop in some photos as well. Oh, that's a bit worrying. That one doesn't want to come out at all. Right. There may have been nuts behind these originally. So doing things on camera is always a bit trickier. Yeah, definitely something's come adrift inside, probably a nut or something. So what I'm going to do now is just close the lid down. Maybe rotate this round just a little bit. As you can see, I've got very little space. My bigger workbench is just completely full of records which need cleaning and the like. So I'm balancing this on top of my, or one of my HMV 162 gramophones at the minute. So just to explain a bit more about what I think is in the case. So basically it should be a motor like this one here, which is a HMV Type 32 motor. And the crank, this is a similar crank, a bit smaller, but it's the same fitting. This screws in here. Like so. And it screws all the way in, and then once it's all the way in, it will start winding the motor. Now this motor won't wind properly, it's got no springs, but you can see that this gear here starts to move. And then if you want to take the crank out, it actually just unscrews and comes out like so. Now this motor is actually upside down in comparison to the one that's actually in there. The shaft with the platter goes on is actually down here, so you have to think about it being the other way around. But essentially the area that I need to grease is actually basically, or I need to get some lubricant into, is actually this little hole here, and that could be quite tricky actually, but I think we'll give it a shot. So this absolutely isn't my idea of fun, but I'm going to take this can of WD-40 here, and I'm going to spray a little bit into or along the shaft. So I'm going to try and get this as far along the shaft as I can till it touches the metal frame of the motor, and hopefully at the point where the shaft, where the winding shaft goes into the motor. Right, I may well need to leave that for a bit. And there we go. Hopefully got that on camera. Right, well, not a lot of sign that I got the WD-40 in the right place, I have to say, but it has come out. So before I remove the motorboard, I'm going to take some of the other items off. There's the auto brake here, there's the clips for the needle tins. That's a normal needle tin. This is the tungstone needle tin one here, which I was previously leaving on because I didn't want to scratch the tin getting it out. However, I've had a thought. I'm going to try wedging a few pieces of cardboard down the edges. And then if I pull the cardboard and the tin together, there we are. There's the tin. Now clearly that clip was supposed to be used with this tin, and it shouldn't have scratched the case, but Yeah, I think it probably has at some point in the past, maybe even when I was experimenting with getting it out a little bit earlier. So that's that bit done. Going to take the clips out as well. Got a selection of screwdrivers, hopefully these will fit. Right, in fact this camera here might be better. So that's out. Trying to keep the screws with them. Problem with setting up the cameras is trying to get everything in shot, and also of course my hands get in the way. So they're just ordering wood screws, but they don't really want to release. Right. That's one side. And again, there we are. That's removed. That will go back on later, no problem. So this bit here is the speed adjuster, and I can leave that on, I think. I don't think I need to take that off. I don't know though. No, I think I'm probably okay to leave that on. But I certainly need, or I think I do need to take the auto brake off. So let's do that now. Okay, so they're all loose. Is that all of them? Yeah, I think so. Let's disengage it from the tone arm. There we are. The auto brake. Now, I probably will clean up the metalwork on this a bit, but I need to be careful with the auto brake because there may be bits of it which need oiling and maybe bits of it which absolutely do not need oiling. So I just need to be careful with this, but it does seem to be working anyway, so we'll see. So there are a few more screws that I need to remove, like here and here, and a couple which aren't in camera shot, to get the board out. And there's a knob there which is a bit loose, unfortunately, but there's one over the other side of the machine as well, so I should be able to get it out using those two. And these screws here, which you probably can see, hold the motor in, and I don't want to take those out just at this point, although I may do in order to sort the motor out. Okay, so removing the metalwork from the motorboard was a bit more time consuming than expected. It was just a bit fiddly getting those wood screws out, and it always takes longer when you're trying to film something as opposed to just doing it. So just using a big stubby screwdriver. That one's a bit tighter. With these slotted screws, it's important that I use a screwdriver that fits well, or else I'll just chew the heads up, and that's just annoying. So that one's pretty much out. Yeah, that one's out. And just these two over here. On these HMVs, the motorboard and the tone-arm board are separate, so you can take certainly the motorboard out without the tone-arm board. At least I believe you can. We're going to find out on this one. Certainly on the other ones I've looked inside, that has been the case. Okay, so I think I probably will just pull these all out. They probably are going to be the same. Yeah, they all look the same. So again, ideally I keep the right one in the right hole, but it's difficult to do that, and also there's every chance that they're not in the holes that they were originally in when it was first assembled back in about 1930. This motorboard has almost certainly been out at some point since then. Right, and now what I should find is that this lifts up, and it does. Now it's interesting, I can actually see a paint label down there. So I'm going to pick this board up and put it over on my main bench, or the bench I'm using for this video, and then we'll be able to have a look at the motor. So before looking at the motor in any detail, I thought it'd be worth just having a little look in the case and seeing what we've got. Well, as I mentioned earlier, there is a patent label there. Can't see all of it, but the numbers at the top there, which are 10, 104, 130, 145 and 157, are models of HMV gramophones, this one being of course the 130. So those were obviously the common models, or the current models at the time. In order to see the rest of that patent label, I think I would have to take the horn out. I don't particularly want to take the horn out. There's no other reason for doing so, but maybe I will. We'll see. Horn does look in very good condition. There's a bit of paint damage there where grease has dropped onto it. That's quite common for gramophones, and or HMV gramophones certainly. And you can see there in the corner, just maybe picked out by the light, there's some old gramophone needles, and in actual fact there are old gramophone needles. Well, where are they? I think there's some there, some there. I mean, this is very, very common, that all over the machine where you can't get to, there are just old gramophone needles. And down there is the sort of plate that the escutcheon was screwed to, so rather than being separate nuts, there was a little plate that it screwed into. Right, well, here we are. This is the motor. This is the bit you've all been waiting for, I'm sure. I certainly have been waiting for it. and let's have a closer look. Now this is a HMV, or if you like, the Gramophone Company Type 32 motor. I know that because it does actually say that on the frame there. It's cast into the frame. And you'll also probably notice that there is a little bit of tissue paper there as well, which doesn't look very old. Well, I put that in a few minutes ago because actually the motor does want to run. And that's probably because I wound the platter backwards a while back. Now, when I first took this motor out of the machine, it wasn't running at all, but as soon as I touched the governor, it sprung into action and has not stopped spinning since, apart from when I've got the piece of tissue paper in. Now, in terms of condition, the motor is, to be honest, pretty clean, really. I mean, there is a big lump of sort of grease, or maybe worse, here. And there's obviously some dirt and grease and stuff in the teeth of the gears, but essentially it's in pretty clean condition. And in fact, if anything, it just looks very, very dry, like all the lubrication has just dried out on it. So that's probably part of the problem. And the springs inside the barrel are probably just as dry as well. So I think realistically this motor is going to need at least a little bit of work, and it, you know, like most motors of this age, would benefit from a full service, as it's clearly not had one in recent years. Now, the machine itself is actually very clean on the inside, like it's not really been touched. And what is nice about this one is actually we've got the oiling diagram, and interestingly enough, although this is a Type 32 motor, it does say part number 9167, but it does also say down here 32. So you can see that the 32 and a revision number, in this case it's G2, which is clearly different from the motor that's actually fitted. But so those two numbers are supposed to be there, and as I've said before, the 32 is the model number. It's not a year or some other number that varies. It's only ever 32 because it's a Type 32 motor. Now, something else I noticed was that in this picture you can see that there are cutouts in the gear, and actually on the motor itself there are no cutouts. So I may be wrong, because I've no idea if this is actually the original motor or not, but I'm guessing that the cutouts were an earlier thing, and later on they just stopped bothering to do it. Just wasn't felt necessary enough. The other thing which I thought was worth noting was that this sticker or label is clearly for multiple different machines. I mean, why would you print a separate one for each different type of machine? The speed bar here, or the speed adjuster bar here, is this sort of style, this sort of shape here, and indeed that is exactly the sort that came with a spare motor that I bought very recently. The actual one fitted has been bent, so it fits the speed control on the top. And if I was to change the motor in here, I would probably keep this bar here and not attempt to use something different and bend that. It just would be completely unnecessary. And this actually is also relevant if anyone is ever thinking about just changing completely the type of motor in a machine. It's not impossible to put a different motor in, but things like the speed control and also the position of the winding handle do tend to vary between motors. Okay, so what's the plan? Well, basically I'm going to remove this motor from this machine and put in my spare motor, and basically worry about what I'm going to do with this motor at a later date. So what I'm going to do is use this spanner here. This is an adjustable wrench or adjustable spanner to take off these three nuts here. Now there are machine screws coming in from the other side. There appear to be cork washers between the frame and the board, and there are spring washers and then nuts on this side. So I'm going to use this. Now there are differences of opinion as to the correct way to do this. Is it like so? Is it like so? I think whichever way around I use this, I'm going to upset somebody. So I'm just going to use it and just take them off and not worry too much about the correct usage or otherwise of the spanner. These things are always much trickier to do when you're on camera. It always looks much more clumsy. Anyway, that's going to come off there. Now I could use a screwdriver the other side, but it just doesn't seem to be necessary. So we take that off. That's dropped all the way out, that one. Fair enough. That's going to drop all the way out too. That one's come out as well. So this is what's coming out. So that motor, I've got to remove this bit here as well. So let's find a little screwdriver for that. That doesn't want to come off. They're both locked in very tightly actually. Now because this label here is in such good condition, I don't really want to start spraying WD-40 on the board, but what we'll do, just put a little bit of paper under there and try some lighter fluid. Well, I've just checked my spare motor and the screws do indeed come out like you would expect them to, so they're just stuck in. I think they're just stiff. I don't think there's anything that I'm missing. They've just been in there a long time. Oops. Right, yeah, that's definitely been in there a long time. I have actually broken the tip off the screwdriver. See if you can see there. So that's not so good. This one's probably too big, but we'll just give it a go. Yep, too big. That's too big. Right, maybe this will do. Yep, that's done it. Don't want to mash up the heads on these, but that does not want to come out, that one. It's always the simple little things that take much longer than you expect them to. No, that just does not want to move. So we'll soak it a bit more and leave it, I think. So I've taken a bit of a break. The last session at the bench was not very good. It just goes to show what happens when you're rushing things. I was a bit limited on time. I didn't have very much memory on the cameras. So the main bolts came out reasonably okay, but these little ones here that hold on the bar that goes to the speed control, just just didn't want to come out, and it was really frustrating me, and that probably came through. This one here, let's just demonstrate. This one here is actually now turning, so that's okay. This one here, this is still the best screwdriver I can find. I cannot find a better fitting screwdriver, which is really frustrating. So we're going to give it a bit of a twist. That still does not want to come out. Well, there we are. That has come out. Okay, so that's free now. So what I need to do now is actually move this motor out and put the other one in. So I'll just set the cameras up again, and I'll do that. So if you're enjoying this video, then please give it a like. Thank you. Now it has occurred to me that I probably didn't even need to loosen this screw off, because now I have, this whole thing here just moves. It's just a coupling really. So as the other motor already has one of these on it, I probably can just use the one from the other motor. So if I just tighten this up here again, just goes to show that I am doing this live. Well, let's say live. But if I do that, tighten that up, then maybe I can just pull this out. Like so. So very conveniently, the sort of felt washers or cardboard, or I don't know what they are actually, some sort of fibre washers have been left on the board there, so I don't need to find replacements for those. So I should just be able to put the other motor on. Right, well here is the other motor. I think that's the same. Quick glance at the one I've taken off, it does look to be exactly the same. So I think we can just position this one on. Then we just need to wiggle that in there. Hopefully everything's still in camera shot. So put that one through there. Completely taken the washer out of position. Washer on there. Right, so that's that one. Right, and that's the last screw that had rolled out of sight. This rubber wash was just a temporary one that I had for mounting it up on my own woodwork. Now there are washers that go in on the other side, and I just need to check that I've actually got all of those in too. I may have missed one. Right. that's it roughly in place, not tightened up yet. Quickly flip it over. Now it should be fine, it should be tight enough to flip over. Might wobble slightly. Right, I can see that we have got all the relevant. We've got one there which is not quite in camera shot, one there, and one there, so that looks okay. So I now just have to tighten them up a bit. I think we'll go for finger tightness just to begin with. And there is the connecting arm for the speed control. That's basically it. Just really now needs to be tightened up properly and then put back in the case. So I've tightened up the nuts on the motor. I've also tightened up the screws on the little lifting handles on the motorboard. Now the next thing I'm going to do is actually to refit the escutcheon, and this has an outside bit with a couple of screws and it has an inside plate. So put the plate in there. Now I have had a little practice with this. Well, to be fair, I had technical issues. I didn't have the camera turned on properly. So what I have learned is that I need to put one of the screws in and then line the plate up with one of the screws. I'm not sure which way around it needs to go actually. I don't know. I didn't see because obviously it fell off before I was able to get the motorboard out. So, okay. Let's just put it in this way around. I don't think it really matters. Right, okay, so that's one of the screws in. Therefore the other screws should be in the other hole should be in the right position. Just have to lift it up to the right level. This has probably never been off in its life. Anyway, just tighten those two bits up there. Because the screwed holes or the threaded holes are on the plate, there's no need to actually hold the nuts or hold anything inside. I can just screw it up like that and it will screw tight. So I've got the used needle pot here. I've got a piece of magnetized metal here. So if I just pick up, should just pick up, and you can see very quickly that it's just picking up needles. So I should really have counted these, but it's probably too late now. Put them in with the other used ones. But you can see there are lots and lots of used needles here. I probably won't get them all. Look at all of those. Some of those have been there quite some time. Now the horn actually, I don't think is magnetic. No. I think it's some sort of tin plate. I'm not entirely sure what, but it's not made of steel. It's always interesting pulling old needles out of machines, because you get to see the sorts of needles that previous owners used. Okay, well, I've put the motorboard back into the machine, and I had a little play with it, and I found a couple of problems. First problem is that the platter doesn't fit. The spindle is fractionally too big for the hole in the platter. Now, I've measured the spindle against the spindles of my other similar motors, and this one's about 0.2 millimeter, which is somewhere in the region of 8 thou too big. This motor, as I certainly covered in a previous video, I believe is an American made motor. It shouldn't make any difference at all. The motors were supposed to be identical, but it does seem to be very slightly bigger. Now, there are various options. I mean, probably I could tap this into place with a mallet. I mean, this is just I think thin metal here. I don't think that's not a heavy duty casting or anything. I probably could just use a mallet and tap that into place. I mean, it would be possible, of course, to take this part out of the motor and turn it down on the lathe, but I absolutely am not going to do that. I would hate to modify an original part in that way. But I have another way, another solution. And the other solution is, quite simply, that I have another platter. And this platter is from my, I've written it on here, my teak HMV 162. It's a machine that currently doesn't work, but I believe this machine was actually made in India, and I think it's made out of teak rather than mahogany or oak, as it would be if it was a UK one. Anyway, that's irrelevant. Let's try the platter. And indeed, that platter actually fits. I've no idea why the platter fits. I mean, it's essentially the same part from the same factory, because the Indian HMVs had all their metalwork sent out to India from the UK. It was only the woodwork and the assembly that was done out in India. So it's essentially the same part, but there's probably, 3, 4, 5 years between them on the production run. And maybe that makes a difference. Anyway, that does fit. So the other problem is that although I've wound the motor up a little bit, it's not running. Now, there's no manual brake fitted to this machine at all. The auto brake's not been refitted. So why does it not run? Well, actually, if I move this little lever here and put it on full speed, it does actually run, and we can test the speed. So that's showing about 81 there. But when I bring it back to around, well, somewhere between 78 and fast, we're right down to 65. So there's clearly a problem there. That speed adjustment isn't correct. So it might be possible to adjust it using this little control here. There's a little wheel I think I can turn to loosen off the dial and reset it. However, it's occurred to me that it's probably something to do with the way that I connected up this control, or this bar here actually, to the motor when I fitted it. Okay, so although the dial is somewhere sort of halfway along the scale, when I look inside here I can see that the pad is touching the wheel and it's stopping it turning. And actually, if I pull that out like that, you can see that it starts up again. So that position there would be right if the dial was set all the way to 0, but it's not right when it's set sort of halfway along the scale. It should really be, pad should really be out here somewhere. Now what I think I can do is just leave that like it is there, and then just loosen off this here. Okay, find a suitable screwdriver. So that's now loose. If I flip this over like this, and then I set the dial all the way to slow, and then open it up again, and then tighten this screw here. Right, hopefully that'll be tight enough. So if I fit my little speed tester, I can now check the speed. Now it's not important to have the platter on, it's also not important to have the tone arm down and on a record. Those things shouldn't actually affect the speed with such a big spring motor like this. They might affect it on a very, very lightweight machine, but not on a bigger size one like this. So anyway, let's just adjust the dial around here to 78, and that's actually running quite well. So let's check the speed. And that's actually showing 77.5 RPM, which, considering that the dial is set to 78, is actually not too inaccurate. Yeah, that's 77. So I think that answers the speed question. And because I don't have the auto brake fitted, I can only actually stop it by turning it back to slow like that, all the way back to the slow mark. So I will need to put the auto brake back on. So with the motor running and the platter turning at a sensible speed, I probably could just play a record, but I thought it might be worth cleaning up inside here a bit. There's definitely some dirt and whatever, and I'm going to take the opportunity to take off the speed control and maybe the needle cups as well, and clean it with a bit of hand cleaner. Now I'm just going to use a little hand cleaner on a microfiber cloth. I've used this before on another gramophone quite successfully, but I'm going to start under the platter just in case there's a problem with it affecting the finish. Anyway, I don't know if you can see that. Hopefully that's coming out on the camera. I mean, there we are. The surface didn't look too bad, but it's coming up pretty dirty. Yes, that's definitely pretty dirty. Now, tempting as it is to take the tone arm out, I think there are ball bearings in this section down here. So I don't really want to muck with that at the minute. I'll just have to clean round it when I get to that point. The little lifting handles, sort of here and here, I can clean round without too much trouble. Now, due to the lights and the cameras and the microphones, I may well miss bits. It's not so easy to get to everything. May not look like it, but I'm actually sort of quite enclosed in where I am. I can't really move around too much. So I may well miss bits, but I'll have a look at it off camera and touch up any bits that I miss. So I want to put the hardware back on. Now, I'm not going to polish it all up because I quite like the sort of dull patina on it, but there is a mark on the speed control here, which I'm going to have a go at removing or at least reducing. Now, it does look like rust, and in actual fact the speed control is steel as opposed to brass, so I'm not sure how well that's going to clean up, but let's give it a go. Yes, unfortunately that's just confirmed what I thought, and that is the plating is damaged and rust has got in. So there's not much I can do about that really at the minute. So now the metalwork is back in the case, I thought it was worth having a quick look at the automatic brake, which is this bit here. So I think in this position the platter would be stopped, and it's this little piece of leather here which will be touching the platter and stopping it. When the arm is brought into play like so, that will start it, and then as this moves across the record nothing happens, but when it hits the run out groove at the end and then starts moving back and forth, it triggers. So let's try that again. In fact, if I do it like this, might be a better view. So just pretend that the sound box is, well, let's move it into the starting position. Record has started, and then as the sound box moves across the record, like so, and then at the end it will move back and forth in the run-off groove and trigger the brake. How clever. Right, well, I put the platter that fits back onto this machine. Remember, this isn't the right platter for it, and there is a problem. So imagine that this sound box is travelling in playing a record like so. When it gets to the run out groove, it triggers, but you can see that the pad here doesn't touch the platter, so the platter is still at liberty to move. So basically the auto brake won't work. Now it might be because the motor is too high up, and I could put spaces in. I could put let me find something suitable. Yeah, I could put maybe tap washers in like so to shim the motor into a lower position, but that could cause problems with the winding handle because the hole for the winding handle would be moved down. What I'm going to try to do, and it's not ideal, is to use these washers to actually shim up the auto brake. So I put the rubber washers in place, and so the whole thing's been raised up, and I've had to use slightly longer screws as well. I mean, these are vintage screws, but they're not as nice as the ones that were in there. If I was going to keep it like this, I would probably find some better screws. Now, it's clearly not supposed to be that high up. although it does just about still fit here. I might put a little bit of oil on this so that it doesn't rub too much, but it's not too bad. What is slightly interesting, I noticed this quite a while ago, is there is a mark here, sort of rubbing mark, where the auto brake has been rubbing against the woodwork, and I'm sure that shouldn't be the case, which may indicate that it's slightly out of alignment, or was slightly out of alignment anyway. So let's give it a little test. So that would be starting. So yeah, so that in theory should work. So let's try it with the platter now. Give it a bit of a wind. Right, that's just the platter settling on the pin. That's nothing to worry about. So needle on the record, play the record, get to the end. Okay, so that does work. I mean, the pad's not shaped to the edge of the rim. It's going to be at a slightly different height to what it was before, but it is stopping the platter. And if I take the brake off again, you can see the platter starts up again.
In all ways rely upon me. Should any doubt come, wait for the outcome, hopefully. Always, in all ways, whatever may be, I will rely on just you and trust you. Sometimes in small ways we may not agree, but we can weather hardship together, wait and see. We'll find a happy ending if you will keep depending always in all ways on me.
So it didn't auto stop, but what a great tune, and didn't it sound great? So I thought I ought to have another go at demonstrating the auto brake. So I found this record here, which does have a very eccentric run out groove. Now it's a Gracie Fields, I probably wouldn't get away with actually playing it, so I'm just going to play just the very last little bit of it just to demonstrate the auto brake. Now I have changed the needle as well. Now, as you can see, there is a bit of a problem. It's not actually stopping. If I do it manually, it works just fine. So there's obviously just a little bit too much friction on the auto brake somewhere. So I'm going to have to strip that down or oil it or something to get that working. So that's unfortunate, but there we go. Anyway, what do you think? Let me know in the comments. And if you have enjoyed this video, then you might like this one too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.